Well, I appreciate everyone coming. Thanks so much. This is always a fun one to talk about community character, history, culture, all of that. I'm Brian Wright, Principal of Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative. And we always get a couple of new people here. So we do the introductions and we see lots of familiar faces. So we are, for those who are new, I am leading a team of consultants, planners and engineers and economists and all sorts of people who are experts in different topics and fields to help you all craft your vision for the future and to get it all written down on paper and put into a document that is the comprehensive plan. So I've got with me on my team Becky Timmons. Becky's a planner. I also have Chauncey Lundy. Chauncey is a planner and engineer who's here to focus on the equity side of things. The whole plan is based on the foundation of equity. So Chauncey is going to make sure that we don't ever miss a beat on that. And so each time we get done meeting with all of you, we kind of circle back up as a team and talk about the things we heard and how to interpret that and how it can be incorporated into a plan. I've got Jara Smith from City Explained. Jara works with Matt Noonkester, who's down there, and they are working on the analytical side of things and mapping and trying to understand the data. And then we have other folks who are working diligently while we're all talking, and they're able to listen in what we're saying. So Natalia is there from the city, planner, and Christopher George is from the communications department. And we've got maybe Martin at CC Woodson in case anybody drops in for an in-person. And if anybody who doesn't already have their camera on wants to turn it on, we'd be happy to see your face. Thank you, Susan. And we will go around, and if you guys can introduce yourselves, I will call you out as you are appearing on my screen. So Philip.
Philip Stone. I serve on the City Planning Commission, and I just ate a banana and something's in my throat. I serve on the City Planning Commission, and I live in Hampton Heights, and I'm actually a historian and a college archivist at Wofford.
Wonderful. It's a bad time to discover an allergy to bananas. Daryl.
I'm Daryl Harmon. I live in Beaumont. I'm one of the founding board members for the Proud Mary Theater Company, which is South Carolina's only queer theater company.
Nice. Melissa.
Hey, Melissa Early. Can you see me? My living room is weird. I'm with the Chapman Cultural Center. I'm the Impact and Outreach Director there.
So do people give you endless grief when you show up late to an event? Melissa Early?
No, because they know that I never live up to my name.
I was just thinking that would be the worst name for me ever. That would be the worst name for me. So
yeah.
Hey, Brad. Can you hear me, Brad?
Yeah, Brian, your audio keeps doing that weird scratchy thing. You may need to mute and unmute.
Thank you, Becky.
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard you the second time though. Yeah, I'm Brad Steineke. I work at the county library downtown. I live in Hampton Heights, and my role at the library is as a public historian and part-time sort of archivist role there as well.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so between you and Philip, I need to pick your brains because I love history. And I've been searching far and wide for historic maps of the city, and I've not had too much luck. And so let's talk afterwards.
Sure. What time period?
Brad's your guy.
What time period are you interested in? Any
from the
old
beginning,
maps?
from the earliest map up until about World War II.
Okay, I can help you out.
Hey, I'm Jennifer O'Shields. I work for a nonprofit, Safe Homes Rape Crisis Coalition here in Spartanburg. We are located in the city, and I also live in the city of Spartanburg.
Great. And Susan?
Hey, I'm Susan Myers. So I also live in Hampton Heights and work at the library, and I have that shirt, Brad, and I kind of feel like I should go put it on and then just like single white female. So I'm in teen services at the library, and I also have a foster dog who might be making an appearance. His name is Turbo. He's 4 months and he's very cute.
Nice. So are you going to get some teens to participate and tell them we're planning the future of their city?
Yeah, that'd be great if I still saw them, but we're not really seeing people these days. So I could try the people I see though. The teens I see.
Yeah, or even everybody who has a library card, you just send them a message. Right.
Yeah, we could, Brad, we should probably talk to Todd about that because I think he would be, yeah, interested in getting the message out.
I put up a few
Tell them they
posters
can check out a
about
free
this,
book.
but yeah, we should try a larger blast to directly reach people. I agree.
Yeah.
And tell them if they participate, they get to borrow a free book.
That's a big selling point.
Susan.
That me?
Yes.
There's more than one Susan. Okay. I missed the beginning, but I guess I'm supposed to tell you about me. I'm a retired school psychologist, and I'm just interested in this as a citizen.
You say school psychologist?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You know, there
Let's
are
see.
such things.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Tamika.
Yeah.
You're next.
Yay. My name is Tamika Thompson. I am a local citizen, and as Natalia pointed out earlier, I am actually a part of a group here called Siren, which is the Spartanburg Initiative for Racial Equity Now, and just really interested in this in terms of family, in terms of what I do day to day, and just, you know, Spartanburg growing for the years to come.
Great. All right, David with the CDs in the background.
My name's David Ocasio. I also work for the Chapman Cultural Center, where I'm the Marketing and Communications Director, and I also live in Hampton Heights.
Great. Tony.
Tony Sutton, president of South Converse Neighborhood Association, community advocate, and I'm also part of Siren.
Great. Brittany.
Hi, I'm Brittany Brandt. I currently have Stone and Sawyer trying to get out of my house right now. So I'm here. I'm just concerned and love the community and nonprofit sector and all that jazz. So happy to be here.
Thanks. Abigail.
Hi, I'm Abigail Hoffman. I write for In the Berg, which is a daily morning email with Spartanburg Herald Journal and One Spartanburg Inc. I live in Converse Heights and really love Spartanburg's history, not to the extent of Brad and Philip, but I love studying the history and participating in the arts community. And I actually just came from Chapman Cultural Center.
Great. Next we have the Mad Artist.
Hi, my name is Rodriguez Cardell, also go by the Mad Artist. I'm a visual artist. I do anything that has any type of involvement in the arts. I do theater as well. This community activist. I'm very interested in what's going on in terms of the future of Spartanburg. I'm born and raised here, so it means a lot more to me. So that's why you'll see me, really involved in trying to reach out to make sure that, we can bridge any type of gaps that's happening within our community.
Great. If you haven't gone to check out his webpage, you got to check it out. There's some cool stuff on there. Yeah. And I didn't introduce Chris Story earlier. I was saying who's here from the city. So Chris, city manager, is here. And then I may not have said Jessica, who's here, works with us as well as a planner. I think I hadn't scrolled down far enough on my screen. So, all right. So history, culture, arts, community, where to begin? What is the essence of Spartanburg? People say want to preserve, what makes Spartanburg special. What is that? Who's first?
I'll jump in. I have worked in the arts in Charleston, Greenville, Savannah, Georgia, and in the last 20 years in Spartanburg. And the most remarkable overall thing that I can say about Spartanburg is that it's collaborative on a level and on a scale that I've just never experienced before. I talk to my artist friends in Greenville and I'll tell them, you know, I had a meeting with the artist collective Spartanburg, and they're like, oh, you guys talk to each other? You work together? You know, I'll talk about working with the chamber, working with the city, working with the county, working with the parks department, working with the library system. And by the way, I'm a former librarian too. I think we're really, there's too many of us here. But anyway,
There's no such thing as too many librarians.
that was a former life of mine. But anyway, that's the big takeaway that I want to. I hope that Spartanburg never outgrows that. I think part of it is that we're a smaller city, but I just want to see that nurtured, and I want to see that remain.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually, Melissa. And I've been, as an outsider, been seeing that pattern here that people tend, you know, groups and organizations tend to work together more so than they do in a lot of other communities. And I remember we were working in one city, and they had, we were trying to document all the different arts groups, and there were like 32 of them, and they didn't talk to each other because they were competitive for resources and funding and you know, all of that. And so it was just like, one of the things we said was everybody needs to get together, and if you want to make, you know, this an arts and culture city that, you know, people are known for it, so there's enough resources and patrons to go around, then, you know, let's grow the whole movement as together. But you got to start by working together and taking that risk to have that trust. So I'm glad y'all are already doing that.
Yeah.
If I can, right quick, I'd like to give two perspectives, one from my mom, who's not here right now, but we were talking about this last night, and then one from myself. So one's probably more or less positive. I don't want to say more negative. One's less positive than the other. So my mother is an immigrant from South America. She's a brown woman. She only has a GED level education, but she taught herself English. She's incredibly intelligent. She works at Walmart on the east side. And she kind of keeps to herself, not necessarily out of a desire to do so, but because she feels like she doesn't really see herself reflected in this community. And the instances that she's tried to go out, she just kind of feels alienated because she is not culturally American, one, or white. So she feels like there's this huge pressure and like a barrier that she can't overcome because she can't become white. Whereas I am very light skinned and I speak with an American accent and I can kind of slip in and out, and sometimes people don't know. So she's living a different experience than I am, and it concerns me because she is getting older, and I don't want her to get older and feel like there's nothing here for her, and that she's staying here just for me. So that's one aspect on that. The other aspect, myself, young person kind of growing up in Spartanburg County, again, being able to code switch and slip in and out of whiteness, as it were. I think Spartanburg has some kind of energy going for it that can't really be captured or put into words that makes it cool for certain kinds of young people. And I don't know exactly what that is, but I hear people say that they don't want Spartanburg, like Melissa just said, to outgrow that and become kind of yuppie or gimmicky. Like people, no knocks on Greenville, but people feel like Greenville is so commercialized. Like their Main Street looks great, but there's nothing there that speaks to the soul of the community. So holding on to whatever it is that makes Spartanburg, if we can do that, however we do that, we should do that. But we should also look at how do we really embrace multicultural, multiple cultures outside of the International Festival, which is great. I love that we have that. It's awesome. I think Columbia was actually supposed to be the honor country this year. But more expanded beyond that. Like, we're more than our food. We're more than the fun you can have at a festival themed around us. We're real people who want a place in this community and want to help. But there's just some barrier there that we feel like we can't come in. And I'm done.
So I'm actually from Greenville, and Natalia is right. It is, I'm just gonna say it straight up because I'm from there and I can. It's Yuppieville. It is the most, it is pervasive whiteness throughout Greenville. That is how this entire city is built. And that is a grave concern of making sure that this city doesn't move in that direction. One of the awarenesses that came out of the last meeting that I was in for a different initiative was we had people talking about how they did not feel like the boards here were inclusive. They felt very much that that the boards are mostly white or people who are willing to be quiet to get along, to go along. And they didn't feel like they had a place on those boards and those commissions here in Spartanburg. So that is a huge awareness that keeps coming up when we start talking to people who used to work for certain nonprofits, who worked in positions at the chamber, people who used to work for the city. This is a reoccurring theme, is they don't feel like they can have a voice as a person of color in this community.
So one thing I'd like to get y'all's insight on is, and Natalia, maybe this is a follow-up to your mom, is what are some things like, are there examples like physical things that you can say, when I am in a place like this, or when I see this thing, or when I feel that, or not when I feel, when these things happen, I feel this way. It makes me have this feeling of other, and that it's not for me, so that we can start to one, find those things and address them. And then secondarily, a follow-up question is, what are the things that where are places that you feel good? And so we can say, like, what are the characteristics, those places that we can bring to Spartanburg to make sure that Spartanburg has that welcoming, inclusive feeling?
Yes, I'll have to ask her for more specifics on that. She's very reticent to talk about anything that bothers her, so I'll try to pull that out of her. But even just speaking from the Latin perspective myself, I honestly think it's in people's attitudes. So I don't know how you change people's attitudes, but you feel it as a person of color when you walk in somewhere, you're talking to someone who has no desire for you to be there or to speak with you or to engage with you in whatever it is that you're there to do. So my mom would love to have opportunities to volunteer, but she doesn't know really where she could go without being looked down on as like, how can you even help us? One. Another idea she had was like community classes that are low cost or no cost, like yoga classes. She loves yoga, would love to do it in a class with other people who also love yoga, but she's not in the position to shell out like $40, $50 a month for a yoga studio membership. So yeah, there's that. And then I guess marketing, like, how do you market? David's here, he's Puerto Rican. David, how would you market to Latin people in Spartanburg? I've often wondered that. I don't know.
I guess that's something that we have struggled with and I've thought about a lot. We've had conversations with Ramon Nieves Lugo out of Greenville about something about trying to reach the Hispanic market more, since that's kind of what he specializes in with his ad agency over there. And then also we have Araceli Hernandez LaRoche, who's on our board of the Chapman Cultural Center. So I don't really know if I have an answer, more as it's something that for our organization definitely is a focus and something that we want to try to branch out and do. I don't know if anybody's familiar, but we have launched, obviously not in Spartanburg, but the Mayfair Art Studios in Arcadia, South Carolina. And that being in a very, very heavily populated Hispanic area and neighborhood, that's definitely somewhere where we're going to try to focus for more like low cost classes that we're hoping to start there, reaching out to doing outreach with the Hispanic community. I know Melissa's been, she's worked directly with the Hispanic Alliance. So it's definitely something that we're trying to do, but I don't know if I have a specific answer for how to actually do it. So
Yeah, and I think maybe it would be worthwhile to have a meeting of those minds. Like I've never been in a room where there was in Spartanburg where there was more than one or two Latino people. And that's weird to me, but I digress. So a meeting of the minds maybe could happen. And then another thing that's, and I'll stop here after this one, I'll stop talking. I don't want other people to talk, but just kind of reminding folks that the Latin population is the fastest growing population in Greenville, Spartanburg, and a couple of other counties. So we're here, and sometimes it seems like we get left out of the conversation when we're talking about people of color or equity. I mean, I've unfortunately heard people that I know and respect basically kind of offhandedly be like, well, they're just they're being we Latinos. You know, there's just a few of them. We don't need to listen to them, or groups formed around promoting equity for people of color, but we're just not invited. So I understand there's like the immigrant thing, not being American, and it adds another layer of alienness or otherness, but maybe being very intentional. And it's not just Latin immigrants. There's plenty of other immigrants in Spartanburg, but the immigrant experience in Spartanburg, somebody should focus on that. And thank you.
There's Afro-Caribbean people in the community. Oh, I don't know who that was.
That's Chauncey. I was going to ask a question. When you brought up about your mom wanting to go to classes, and I think that's something that a lot of people want to participate in just in general. Do you all have programs through your Parks and Recreation Center that offer classes that people want to know about? Like, how is the Parks and Rec Center system in a way that, like, because I know there are places where I've been where people love the Parks and Recs department because they offer so many classes, and you see a lot of diversity in that Parks and Rec system, like from yoga to swimming, or what's this pickleball, something I've heard about, pickleball, you know, whatever it might be. But and community members are able to help come up with some of those things which bring people together. So I just wanted to know, I'm not saying that's the solution necessarily, but I'm just trying to figure out ways that, you know, and from a comp plan perspective, as we talk about community, how the Parks and Rec system is.
Yeah, okay, now I promise this is the last thing I'm going to say as a city person. I think the Parks and Rec department does a great job, but they focus a lot on physical activity and children. So maybe other kinds of, like going back to what I was talking about yesterday, like having arts programs in the community centers, like more gentle physical activities, that would be cool.
Okay.
The county parks department, I know, has a 50 and older group that they do various activities and exercises with in classes. I believe the city Parks and Rec at various community centers like CC Woodson have classes that are free, like yoga classes and Zumba and stuff, that I believe the majority of the attendants are adults or older adults. But with COVID, those were all canceled and the community centers were closed for classes for a while. And I'm not sure if they've opened back up yet. So they do have classes, but I feel like they're during set specific times of the day. And I don't know how diverse that is in days or hours offered.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pull back just a little bit because I think there's a bigger principle going on here. Historically, communities like Spartanburg in the South have thought, when they started thinking about they started thinking in biracial terms, Black and white. And of course, Natalia is absolutely correct. And that's something that has started to show up in Southern history literature, is trying to think about the South as multiracial, multi-ethnic. And so that may be something that our consultants can kind of look at and see what are other cities in the South, Southeast in particular, what are they how are they working with recognize, and Spartanburg has had a strong international community for a long time. A lot of that was European immigration coming to work to do textile kind of stuff. So I'll kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Susan, did you have something you were going to add?
Me?
Yeah, I went to put it in the chat, but I was just gonna
Oh,
say.
sorry, the other Susan. Yes, there's two.
Sorry, Susan. Potato chips.
Susan Myers.
So obviously this is on pause right now, and I know it's really specific just to address the yoga thing. The library did offer yoga in person. It was free for a really long time, and then we started charging $2 a person, which is still really affordable, but just to offset the price. And that was like, I think Thursdays at like 11 and Wednesdays at like 5:30, just at headquarters. And we have 9 locations around the county, and they had some too. So just when things get back to normal, whenever that is, hopefully that will start again.
Well, and Katie with Yogalicious, they do pretty reduced rate kind of, I can't think of the words, yoga classes, and some by just donation as well. So there are some just on that front.
Great. What about, I'm just thinking about culture and things and heritage. You know, we worked in some, it was in Burlington, Vermont. I think they speak 62 languages in the school, in their elementary school. 62 languages are spoken. So they're, you know, massively culturally diverse. People from, they're a refugee resettlement area, why they happen to have so much diversity in the cultures there. And so one of the things we said was, well, that's incredible. Most people wouldn't know that when they came to visit the city. And so how do we feature that? And what are the lists of places that people are from? And something as simple as we were trying to find ways to get people from the waterfront into the downtown, because the waterfront was near the downtown, but it was a big hill. And so along this boulevard, or this, it was actually Main Street, I think it was, we had the idea of, because I also talked about public art as well. And so in order to get somebody to want to walk a distance, especially against the slope, the hill, you have to kind of give them a reason, a destination they can see. You beckon them on. And so at each block, the idea was to have a place for public art. And so you'd have that. And so you'd see the art up the hill. But then along the whole way, the idea was to have flags from all the different countries that are represented in the city, and sort of this, avenue of flags of culture, just to highlight that. And so, just little things like that, sort of bringing that out. And so you can imagine, Natalia, if your mom was walking down that road, and you're like, there's Columbia, and so you just like see that, those little moments. I mean, it seems, some people might say, oh, well, that's sort of superficial or whatever, but I just know me when I travel and I go somewhere and I don't speak the language, I don't understand the culture, but you see something that reminds you, even the smallest thing, of where you are or where you're from, in a place where you feel a stranger. It makes you feel better.
Yeah, it's an acknowledgement and a welcoming acknowledgement of your existence, which is missing
Right.
so much of the time, unfortunately.
And it'd be kind of cool too. You could imagine, like, you say, well, I mean, we might not catch everybody, or what do we do when somebody moves in and get a new map? Like you ever been to a place where people put pins on the board to all the, like a restaurant where people have traveled from, and you just add a pin, and the more pins, the better. And so it's kind of cool. And even if someone moves away, you're the only Colombian person moved away. Well, we had somebody from Colombia, and that's part of who we are now. When we have that map, that flag. And so some little things like that, but certainly if we've got artists and stuff around the city, they could probably think of way cooler ideas. So.
Giant Puerto Rican flag somewhere.
Brittany?
Look, are we raising hands or are we just talking? Because I missed part of it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, we didn't say. If you know how to raise your hand, then great. That helps me because I don't see people who want to talk next. So
I did, but I'm still jumping in. So without getting super on a soapbox that'll take forever, can we just kind of say what a good part of this is? We're talking about racial equity across the board overall with the comprehensive plan, and especially culture and the arts district and all this. Everyone needs a place at the table. And I don't feel like everyone thinks they have a place at the table because the invitation doesn't seem extended. And one, why is there an invitation that needs to be extended anyway? You know what I'm saying? Like, my ethnic background is everything that burns in the freaking sun. Okay. So like, I'm as white as you can get. But I still see a problem. There's a definite issue where every culture isn't made to feel welcome, and that's crap. America was years ago just talked about being the great melting pot and all that, and then suddenly that whole narrative kind of disappeared, and now there's such a disconnect with everything going on in the world. But in Spartanburg specifically, it's like we have so many awesome artists and so many awesome people and just so many great stories. And I think if we break it down to dismantling those barriers and finding out how we're connected and stuff, and there's a way to do it without seeming like you're what is it like, oh, tell us about your culture. You know, there's a different way. There's got to be a way to engage everyone from every community without seeming like, I can't think of the words, but do you all know what I'm trying to get out? Natalia, do you know what I'm trying to say?
I understand. Yeah,
Not being patronizing to us.
Exactly.
We know our value. We just want a space to display it.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, and actually that's a great point. And after the last meeting, we were just having a team discussion about how different cultures and different people of different backgrounds participate differently. And this was just a good example of how, hopefully, especially those of you who were in the last meeting, it illustrates how we are listening, and we try to go back and understand more. So what we're talking about is the story was shared about people from the community having an objection to a development proposal, and then it was sort of reported that, well, there wasn't really any objection to it. And so as we were discussing as a team, we said, well, we know that in the sort of at a typical city hall meeting, you have, if there's a proposal that's of concern, you might have a line out the door of city hall, and you have, person after person after person, but the demographics of that person tends to be white. And that sort of thing. And each person says, I've got my voice, I'm going to use it, I'm going to take my turn. And we're also going to show the number of us, the sheer number of people who disagree with this. Whereas in other cultures, and Chauncey was explaining to us that, a lot of times people, have essentially a representative, if you will, of their neighborhood, of their group or whatever, who speaks for the greater group. And so if, for instance, the elected officials are judging the amount of objection at a particular development proposal based on how many people stood up at the mic and talked, it could actually be, completely wrong. Let's say you've got 20 people who stood up and talked for, however you get 2 minutes apiece, so, nearly an hour of worth of objections. And one person stood up who's maybe representing 300 people in their neighborhood who all literally, everybody tries to speak for everybody, but maybe they literally all do agree. And so you would have, using sort of that cultural meter, misjudged what the level of objection is. And so we know that happens. And we also know that not everybody feels comfortable coming to City Hall setting, and so one of the things that we've been talking about is the multitude of ways we've been trying to reach out to people to make sure that it's clear to everyone that there is a seat at the table. It's hard for me because I'm often the one who's sitting here always at the table, waiting for people to come talk to me and share things. And, a lot of times I show up in a city and a lot of things have come before me that have, made people feel like they don't have a voice at the table. And, me and my team are like earnestly pleading, please come and give us this input. And sometimes we're a little too late. Other times we just just have to count on, well, we have this group of neighborhood ambassadors that are hopefully going to represent people who don't show up. But then each of these meetings, we hope that people go back and say, wow, I don't know, I think these people really do want to hear, let's give it another try. And so that's kind of where we're at. Tamika, you end up there.
So one of the ways that I do experience whether or not a place is a safe space for myself and particularly my children to be in is through art and through art culture. So a lot of the things, without naming a specific business, so there's a place here that you can go and eat, and it's like an outdoor venue type of deal. But the music that they host, the clientele that is there, the clientele that is photographed for all of their marketing is always white. There might be a speck of a Black person there. And marketing is one of the first ways that I decide, okay, well, that's not a space that I feel okay being in, and certainly not a place I'm not going to put my child in, because for me, it's not always about just safety. It's like full blown, am I welcome here? Is this going to be a confrontation if I'm here longer than 5 minutes? Are they going to treat me differently for sitting down at the table? And I've run into those issues in places in Spartanburg as recently as a month ago. So it's not as much as there's so much going on in Spartanburg that is really great. And there's been some things that, like, I was looking forward to a bunch of events that were planned that obviously someone had spoken up and said and taken the time to say that we are in need of, Black music events. We're in need of Latinx music events. But COVID, canceled all of that. The cultural center had all of these Black artists in there, and I cannot begin to express to you how long we've been waiting for something like that, and would love for it to be something that's more consistent and possibly even permanent, because it makes a difference for that representation to be there. It's my children are already having such a hard time just as preteens navigating this space of what racism does on an everyday basis. So to be able to go into a space where art is curated for you, the music was curated, and the music was a big thing for us because hip hop is not something that shows up downtown Spartanburg whatsoever. It's almost like taboo in some way, and I have no idea why. But going in there and being able to hear Kendrick Lamar when I walked in the door, I was like, okay, they actually put some thought into this. I appreciate that. And that is something that I noted and kept in mind. But a lot of the places here in Spartanburg, you walk in, it's like country music, if not the majority of the time, or rock music. And those are the events that are curated downtown the majority of the time. And I listen to everything, but I would like to feel like they thought about all of the citizens and not just the ones with money when they curate some of these events.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of the things that I find a lot of cities struggle with is when there's a desire in the community to do things that are, a good example that always comes up is a lot of times people are like, hey, let's have buy local, let's shop at our mom and pop shops and not at the big box. You never see anyone object to that. Everyone's like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. It's, and then at the end of the day, the local shops are like, okay, we have the buy local signs on our windows. Now where are all the people who said they wanted to buy local? And so what the thing that we always try to focus on is not just getting the idea in place or the event or whatever the case may be, but how do you sustain it over time so that if that business or that arts organization does a themed concept or whatever, that it's going to be something, because they've got to be able to stay in business, whatever the case may be. And so how do you make sure that people are going to take advantage of that? They say, yes, we're going to come, we're going to do that, we're going to support it. And so you nearly have to have the idea and the implementation and sort of the long-term sustainability concepts for it all part of the discussion from the very beginning, so it doesn't fade out. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to ask too, I remember this happened when I was in college. There was this big controversy because they put out this marketing material, and it was in the School of Architecture, Design and Construction, and it was predominantly white students in there. And I think they actually photoshopped somebody in, was a Black woman, I think, into it, and somebody found the original picture, and it was like this huge controversy. And on the one hand, you can see like why that's not so cool to do that. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, maybe somebody was there who was really trying to make sure it felt inclusive, and they realized like, wow, we don't have any photographs of people of color in it. So all we can do is Photoshop because we want to bring them here and have them, see themselves reflected in this. What do we do? And so there's like this weird fine line of being, sort of fake and inauthentic versus trying to create something that isn't there yet. So you're planting the seed in a place where, something wasn't growing naturally. So any thoughts along those lines, Tamika,
Well,
or anybody?
I'll just say on that piece I think that's one of the key issues with not hiring people from the communities, specifically. That's how you end up in, oops, we're sorry, we have to retract this. I apologize, this went out, because they don't know the communities that they're trying to engage well enough to put out proper marketing. It doesn't have to always be a photo. There's lots of things that have tie-ins for different cultural reasons that you can put out there, and people will know, okay, this was created with me in mind. And that's the thing, because there's this big difference between you're welcome to come here and we actually thought of you. Please come in here.
Yeah, good point.
There's a point that I don't know that's really been touched upon in any of the sessions that I've attended, but I've grown up in Spartanburg, lived in Spartanburg just about all my life. But I see there as being a very strong difference between the culture of Spartanburg County and the culture of the city of Spartanburg. And I don't know if that's a long-standing railroad connection on a major railroad line that led to a lot of different groups being in Spartanburg for a long time. But that shows up politically, that shows up demographically, that shows up in many, many characteristics. And in ways that are, I think, a little bit harder to pin down in a sort of cultural sense. But I just kind of wanted to mention that as something that y'all are thinking of as you're putting this together.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, if I could address that a little bit. The Chapman Cultural Center is sort of the designated arts agency for both the city and the county of Spartanburg. And one of the things that I was doing before COVID, part of my job is overseeing the grants that we award to artists throughout the county and nonprofits that are doing art related projects. And so I was going around to all of the different library branches in Cowpens, Woodruff, Chesney, Hacklet, all of the little smaller places. And I was always really impressed and happy with the turnout. I might get like 6 people when I do it at the Chapman Center, and I might get 8 people when I do a grants workshop in Packlet. So I think that there's a desire for it. I'm eager to have the libraries reopen their meeting rooms so I can do that again. But I'm not really sure exactly what I'm trying to say, other than we do what we can to reach out and make our resources as a cultural institution known to as many artists in as many different areas of the county as we can. But obviously word of mouth is such a big and powerful thing. And so I think that my years of working with the Hispanic Alliance, just starting to see a little bit of, some members of that community sending me information about some artists. We've been working with Palmetto Luna, which is a statewide arts organization of visual artists. of Hispanic and Latino backgrounds. And, you know, just, it takes a long time to make, you know, as a largely white organization to make those inroads. But we also have policies on the table that say that our staff and our boards are going to reflect our community, which means that, you know, currently Spartanburg County, I believe it's 36% people of color. There are other things like LGBTQ and age and different parts of the county that we want to include as well. But, you know, we award hundreds of thousands of dollars to the leading arts agencies in Spartanburg, such as the ballet, the Little Theater, Hub City Writers, and, you know, several others. And one of the things that we ask them in their applications to receive those funds is, what are you doing around equity and inclusion and, you know, having those different voices represented? And I can't say that we've seen huge shifts yet, but those conversations in the last few years have started happening more and more often. And we're continually, you know, telling them with, you know, with these grants, we're expecting you to report to us about your progress in those areas. So, I think I've kind of gotten off on the tangent there, but just wanted to speak up. There is kind of a different culture in the smaller areas rather than in the downtown area, certainly where the Chapman Cultural Center is and where the Downtown Cultural District is. But we're trying to do what we can with the limited resources and limited staff that we have to do what we can to reach people.
So Tamika, on the post you just made, when you talk about the white spaces, do you mean literally spaces like public spaces or spaces in the abstract?
So my kids do a lot of like after school activities and get involved in things. The only place we know that we consistently can go in Spartanburg, and it's going to be inclusive every time, no matter what time we go there, is the library downtown, period. Everywhere else, it's very, very hit or miss, and it's mostly miss. My daughter took ballet at the Cultural Center, and she was the only Black girl in the class. And that was, you would think it's not a big deal, especially for a 5-year-old at the time, but it was. This was something that she took in as she wasn't getting the moves because she didn't look like these girls, or her teacher would talk to her more if she was just a little bit lighter. She asked me to straighten her hair, like these kind of things. It absolutely matters. These small things matter. A lot of times the teachers are always white. The instructors are white in so many of these spaces. And when these kids don't see themselves reflected, it almost seems like this is also not an attainable opportunity for them as an adult. So it's just overwhelming. Like I'm 35 and I've just now gotten to a place where I'm comfortable to speak up when I'm the only Black person in a room. But it took 2 decades for me to get to that space. I don't want that for my children. And I see that in so many people here. Like I've mentioned earlier, you know, my uncle is 74, one is 72. They don't bother to speak up because on one hand, one says, you know, it's not going to matter. They do the same thing every 10 years. We have these conversations and the conversations are good for, you know, 6 months. And then we go back to the same status quo of, you know, well, that was nice. We did that diversity training. Back to every day. They don't feel a part of the community in truth. And I think I don't know how we fix that, but I think there's definitely plenty of steps that can be taken that are just not happening.
Well, can I say something to go along with that? But the issue is the reason why that's so hard is because we don't own a lot of things. We don't have the businesses downtown that are ran by African Americans. There's a huge gap in that as far as like actually being able to go into stores. I was in Atlanta earlier this week, and I was on the street and I went to this place called Slutty Vegan, right? And it's an amazing restaurant, but all of the places that surrounded it, they were ran by minorities, and we don't have enough of that downtown. And you know, even the rent to even rent a space down there to actually run your businesses, you know, that's you know, more expensive. And so being able to actually have people in that part of the community to represent you is there definitely like a huge gap. And so no, there won't be any representation unless there's opportunities that allow us to be in those facilities downtown.
Yeah. Well, and you know, to your point, Tamika, about the ballet class, you know, you have to then sort of, I always try to get everything back to the root, you know, like what causes there to not be, you know, a ballet teacher of color? And so is it that when people are children, they don't have access to ballet classes, which then means they aren't prepared, you know, to be a teacher down the road, a ballet teacher down the road, which is then reflected in your daughter's experience. And so you kind of take it all the way back. And so maybe one of the things to do is to say, well, do we need to, you know, as one of the things that the city or whoever provides would be, you know, free ballet classes or what, you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing. And just trying to figure out how to solve that stuff. Because if there isn't a ballet teacher of color in the city, you know, we can't solve that problem. You know, I mean, the comp plan can't anyway, but all of this is relevant to the discussion for sure.
I think there's a longstanding heritage of dance studios that are minority owned. It seems like that's, I think I don't know the full heritage of that and why that, but those are businesses as opposed to the nonprofit at the cultural center.
Yes, and we have moved into a point in our lives where we've been intentionally seeking out Black-owned businesses to support for our children to be a part of because of the representation and to keep that income inflowing into those businesses. But a lot of those businesses are not always here in Spartanburg, and we're trying to put money in locally. And it would be great to have some of the artists that I know personally have their spaces in, you know, the center of what we're calling the heart of Spartanburg in downtown. And those opportunities are not there. So, you know, I'd rather pay a little extra and possibly even pay for another person to be able to take my child to someone who looks like them or has cultural background that is important. So I want them to be world citizens. You know, we go to Mezcal regularly, and we can do that because the space feels comfortable, feels inviting. They make an effort to make you feel like you are welcome there and are darn near family, as opposed to some of these other spaces you go into downtown, and you can tell the night and day difference of how you are served, how you are approached, what happens if there's an issue with your food. Like there's places where I'm like, I'm not going in there because I know that, you know, if this comes out and it's cold or it's wrong, it's going to be an issue if I say anything. So I'm not even going to bother. We'll just skip that for today.
Yeah. Moses, you got a question?
Oh, yeah, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So speaking of what Tamika said about not having my daughter be able to see a Black teacher or another Black student in the class, well, coming from the perspective of a choreographer, when I decided to stop traveling the country and came back home, I used to teach at about 6 or 7 studios in Spartanburg and about 6 or 7 in Greenville. And us choreographers deal with the same issue of wanting to express ourselves and to create that creative initiative in the youth mind so they can have the opportunity to, you know, be the best selves they can. But the problem that we deal with on a constant basis is the adulthood. We deal with the constant racism inside of the dance studios. We deal with when we being very creative and giving dancers the opportunity to use the space, that we'll have I don't remember the actual name of the studio, but there was a race studio I was at that they brought someone in to look over my shoulder and tell me, I don't think that's good enough for them. You need to dial it down some. It's too challenging for them. Dancing is the same way as, you know, any curriculum in school. And the whole thing about that is you have to push their minds. When someone is having fun or they actually feel free, they're gonna give everything they got to express themselves. And I can't count how many times that the many different studios from Greenville and Spartanburg I have experienced the racism side to make me leave when I don't want to leave the students because the establishment. And I'm lucky enough to have my freelance company because I don't want to open up a business just for the fact of there's no outlet. Then it's hard to get a building and then the whole process. There's so many kids out here that I've spoken to from different middle schools and high schools. They all said that they wish they can just let loose and express themselves. And that's about the same as like when me and my organization back in the day, we had a really hard opportunity trying to bring Black culture back to the city of Spartanburg, as far as the spring fling, and because I think prior to we performing, there was gang violence, and they didn't want anything Black really in the city. But thank God, Jane Warner, she gave me an opportunity, and I pressed her, and she wanted to take a chance on giving us a chance. Now, her boss wasn't too keen on about it, but she believed us, and that, I guess, connection or partnership that we started ended up landing to every year residually having great Black entertainment there. And then once she left, same thing happened again. Her boss started pushing us out, disrespecting us at spring fling. So it's a constant thing. We do have a lot of great people here who's actually trying to help and, you know, pushing the whole diversity thing, but we gotta get past the ones who really ain't trying to.
Awesome, thank you.
If I can, I just want to say that I agree representation matters. I have a friend who's a massage therapist, and she's now thinking of becoming a yoga instructor because she wants to take yoga, but she wants to take yoga from a Black woman, and there is a deficit of Black yoga teachers, it seems, in our area, and so she's thinking of going that route. So I think even for myself, like my boys are 5 years old, and they are obviously white and have blonde hair and blue eyes. Like they were born with all the privilege and whatnot just from the way they look. But it's important to me as a mom, which sounds weird, but as a mom, to have them exposed to different cultures too. I don't want them to just grow up with all white teachers or all like white everything. Like I think we all need to learn and grow from each other. And so it infuriates me really when we are, one, still having to have this talk in 2020, but two, that I hope that that from this actual plan, things will actually be implemented that people feel more welcome. Because when I moved to Spartanburg in 2018, part of the reason I moved here was because I felt like it was more inclusive. I felt like it was more diverse. I moved into a neighborhood where I have Latino neighbors and Black neighbors and Asian neighbors and white neighbors. Like I liked that, and I want my boys to grow up in that. I want everyone to grow up in that way. I feel like we all learn from each other, and that should be part of what makes us great instead of something that separates us. But we need representation of all cultures, and again, everyone needs to feel welcome to the table and not like they need an invitation. And I say they, collectively, everyone.
Thank you. What about when you're, I know one of the things that I've heard people talk about that makes them feel like the community is really for them is like, grocery stores that have, or markets that have, cultural ingredients that they, that they count on to make their dishes from, like whatever you would make in Colombia, for instance, Natalia. There's like this thing you can only get, and you can't, they don't have it at Publix or wherever. Or even places, to get your hair done, or to, buy products, or whatever the case may be. I mean, do you feel like you've got a good enough mix to meet people's needs culturally when it comes to retail or services?
I think that depends on what you're looking for. In my case, if I needed someone to do my hair, because my hair is natural, which is a completely different context of Black hair in itself, it's probably more complicated for me to find someone. There's a few that do natural hair, but natural to them could mean, they flat iron your hair, for whatever reason. So I think it just really depends on what you're looking for. If certain styles of clothing that I wear are definitely not available here, I mostly order everything offline. As far as food stuff, I think I've just regressed, especially during COVID, to cooking at home and just grabbing what's going to help the immune system and that kind of thing. But getting special ingredients, I mean, because of the community that we have built, I think I can find what I need. But the fact that you have to go hunt it down is a pain in the butt. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of the shops that are, I think, like there's an Asian market and different places, European market, that kind of thing. I think a lot of times they are in very select parts of the city or whatever. They're not centered in the city. It's not like you have to travel for that. You have to go seek that out. It's kind of like in the group with more, I don't know what the words are, so I'm sorry. But like if you need a specific Hispanic store, it's in a Hispanic neighborhood, that kind of thing. There needs to be more of a city center culturally, I think, where everyone can go and access that, and everyone needs that, and it doesn't need to be where you have to seek it out. And also, just as a complete side note, I think we need to stop thinking of the arts, one, as something that only rich white people care about, and two, like obviously more representation, and three, just personally, I grew up as a poor white kid. I was the one that like wanted to do all of the dance classes and all that stuff, but I was the kind of poor where you could sign up for the dance class and go like one time, and then you were out because you needed to buy shoes, that kind of thing. So I wanted something different for my boys, and I chose life in the nonprofit sector, so it's still a little limited, but still, either way, I'm saying everyone deserves access to something, and I think through the arts, we need to be able to care about people and let people get their passions out and express themselves creatively. And then there's no better way than through the arts, culture, food, music, all of that, to bring people together, because all white people don't like country. All Black people don't like rap music. It's just like, let's break it down. I mean, everyone likes a lot of different things. Let's get that together. I don't know. I'm frustrated.
I think it boils down.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead. No, go, Roger.
I was saying, I think it boils down to the educational gap, because I think if a lot of those artists or those people that actually had the drive to do it, if they had a pipeline of what jobs are accessible to them and what is needed in their community, So then they can get the background that they need when they go to school, or if there are programs that assist them. And these are the jobs that would need artists or people that are creative in these backgrounds. So then it can be utilized in the city and then be implemented into city businesses. If I'm serious, like, because if there was like a list of all, like, you know, I mean, you can Google it, but then what about in Spartanburg and that placement, and how do you get the training? How do you polish the resumes to make it to make people want to hire you? And I think that's where it really boils down to.
Yeah, that's a
Working
great
off
point.
of Rodriguez's statement on like how we think about education. So I'm on the board of the Artist Guild, and we had a meeting at the Chapman Cultural Center the other week. And something that I hope we can speak more to, especially to students of color in Spartanburg, is like, you can be an artist. Like, you don't, like, if that's what you want to do, then you can make a life in that, or some other pursuit outside of mathematics, science, working at the factories. Honestly, if someone had told me and made me feel like I had a future in that, I would be an artist right now. I wouldn't be in government. I love my job. I love working with the community, and it's a passion of mine. But my original dream was something else that I felt like I had to drop and not pursue because my family was poor. I have to make money. So just, and it goes beyond art, but just like fostering some vision for themselves in children of color. I don't know. I'm sure parents are doing that, but as a community, I think we can do more.
Yeah, and I think for me, the underlining theme for a lot of this is funding. Having intentional funding provided to different arts and cultural organizations, not even just the cultural center, to do these things and make new programs that are inclusive and for everybody. Because, I mean, just speaking from my position in the cultural center, it's almost like we're trying to pay our bills, but we don't know how much we're going to make in the coming year. So it's hard to take those risks and branch out when we don't know where that money is really going to come from for a given year.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Jennifer O'Shields. I just had a little something to say too on it, not only with, you know, the arts in our community, but I mean, we also have to look at what's occurring in our children's schools and offering art programs there as well as music and those things. And a lot of kids are not able to join or be a part of that. One, because depending on when those programs meet, it could be after school and they might not have the transportation, let alone trying to find a place to rent certain instruments as well. And to me, that's an issue, you know, that we have to look at as well. And, you know, and that's within the area that these kids are going to, that they're not able to even get access to that. And how and what can we do with that?
Yeah. You know, one thing that occurred to me is, and I don't know what the situation is like in your schools, but I know so many schools across the country are cutting arts and music programs. And it's like a place where the kids already are, it's free. And you know, so it's like, it's gone. And that was sort of like the one spot where people used to get it all the time. And you didn't have to worry about it being anything extra. And so do you guys have arts and culture kind of stuff in schools in Spartanburg?
Yes. Yes. Ava Hughes is our education director. She's been working with the school systems for with every district, as well as private schools, homeschool groups, for over 40 years. She knows every theater, music, art teacher there is, and we have a program called Muse Machine, which each school can sign up for. The Chapman Cultural Center raises funds to meet them halfway. So we pay for half of the cost, and then the school pays for the other half. But with that, the school has a menu of 3 different cultural items that they can select from. So they can have a storyteller, a musician, a visual artist, a gullah storyteller from the coast, all kinds of different of options there that they can choose from for their students for that year. It's part of the arts in the schools, but there are some schools, if you were, I certainly didn't have anything like the Dorman art program when I was growing up. I would have loved it, but they have amazing teachers in at Dorman High School. There are amazing art teachers at lots of other schools, and I'm sure it varies from school to school. But honestly, when I talk to my teacher friends and art friends in Charleston and Greenville, I feel like Spartanburg is doing that part better than at least those 2 examples. It's not perfect, obviously, but it's more robust and longer serving than a lot of other counties in South Carolina, at least.
Great. So before people didn't travel much, do you guys have any sort of mashing up 2 things that are in the headline of this meeting? Do you have any cultural tourism, any heritage tourism going on there? Do you have any significant sites that are cultural? We have like here, we have this really amazing African-American historic neighborhood called Hard Bargain, it's called, and it has this amazing house. The original to the neighborhood is preserved, and it has like essentially a museum in it. And it's when we were working on doing a plan for the neighborhood to help them plan for their future, we were learning more and more about African American heritage tourism, and they were sort of wanted to get on the circuit, if you will, so people would come and visit the neighborhood. Do you guys have any sites like that in the city, or any of that kind of stuff going on already?
In the city, not quite as much as in the county, but at least from the point of view of the library, we have a significant number of people in a normal year that come in to do genealogy research in the library, and will end up engaging with the community either through spending the night in a hotel room here or eating at local restaurants. And since the library is located downtown, often they enter into the pedestrian sphere. So I'd say that's something that's of a significant driver of people who are interested in heritage coming into the city. I think there's room to develop that further, though, because there are certainly historic neighborhoods that are in the city. There are sites that have, I think, a deeper significance outside of just the Spartanburg community as well.
Great. Do you all have tie-ins with the colleges or universities that are there? Are they contributing to arts and culture and whatnot?
I think so. Speaking as somebody at one of those colleges, Wofford has a new art center on campus, and is always part of those Thursday night art walks when those happen.
How diverse are those crowds that are participating in that? Is that something everybody feels comfortable and welcome to participate in?
Probably not as much as it should be.
Okay.
No, I would say that Philip's right. I don't think that kind of the average person of color feels like they're going to see something either by someone like them or that speaks to them. And I don't know. It's also like the social life in Spartanburg is, I don't know, that's just not something that I'm interested in. I don't know if it's my age, my own proclivities or what, but things seem like events seem generally to be geared to the kind of the whiny, not whiny, but like wine drinkers club sort of thing. And that's just not like where I come from. So I'm like, you guys enjoy. But there are other things that I enjoy. I mean, obviously it's coronavirus now, but like the coffee bar is a great spot to see a whole lot of different kinds of people. That like, I mean, the groups keep to themselves, but there's a good cross section at the coffee bar. So I enjoy that kind of atmosphere for what it's worth.
Do they have Colombian coffee?
You know, they do. They actually, they do. They don't have the marker. Anyway, it's a longer story that I won't take up everybody's time. Where's the marker?
Go ahead, Abigail.
On the map. Where is it?
Little River does have Colombian coffee.
Is that why the marker's not there? How dare you? Anyway.
Yeah.
It's great coffee
right now.
And I would just, I mean, I guess echo what Natalia's saying. I don't think it's pretty much the same type of crowd that comes out to these art walks and things to enjoy them. I will say that with our new facility, Mayfair Art Studios, that one is definitely a more diverse and more interesting crowd that we got. We just opened it up last month for the first one. And I just think has a huge part in that because of the artists who are at the facility. So I think we have 4 or 5 out of the, I think 11 leasing artists are artists of color. So obviously they bring their crowd and it's a completely different vibe and environment. And it was actually really nice to see and experience. Because I mean, just being a person of color myself, I think it was even more welcoming. And I'm part of the organization, so that was something nice to see.
The most welcome that I've felt downtown is when the mural was put in. That is the most cross intersection of people that I have seen downtown during even, with COVID, mask and all, interacting, being a part of the community, having conversations that were absolutely necessary, and just taking a lot of pride in what was being put in. Usually when you go downtown, point blank, it is whitewashed as it wants to be. And like the coffee houses, for me personally, that does not, like if somebody invites me to a coffee house, I'm just kind of like, okay, I'll be there, but I'm not thrilled about it. Like it doesn't inspire me whatsoever. Coffee houses, yoga bars, like that's not what I'm looking for as far as entertainment or enjoyment whatsoever. I would prefer to be in art spaces. Blues Boulevard, before it closed down, was a great space to be in. I just think it maybe didn't have the right, it should have been somewhere else in the city. Where it is just kind of off in the corner. Small Cakes has a great vibe and present. They're really friendly and they seem to have a very diverse crowd coming in and out. There is another place that I cannot think of that is a really great Asian restaurant to just sit in and vibe in, enjoy. But the majority of downtown Spartanburg, like we had a protest in June and we had so many different conversations there about how just walking through the streets. We walked down the street where I guess it's Spill the Beans. Is that what it is? I can't remember the name of it, but everybody in there was white, every single person. And they were just staring at us or jeering or just, being obnoxious. And I think part of the things that keep butting head in the city is there's so many people here that do not do life with other people who do not look like them. Showing up for these diversity trainings or these one-time events or these group PR visual type things, like that's not what's necessary. That's not what's needed. We need people to actually be doing life with people. Like I ask people all the time and I challenge people on my social media. I'm like, how often do you go and eat at a Black-owned restaurant? Do you know where the Latinx restaurants here are in the city? And most people don't spend their money there. they spend their money downtown in the same 3 or 4 restaurants that are already supported by people who don't need the money. And then when these Black owned businesses and Latinx businesses go out of business, everybody acts surprised, as opposed to you could have been pitching in this whole time.
Yeah, I felt that way about the Caribbean restaurant on East Main. I mean, it was further out on East Main.
Yes.
And it was so good. And I went there a few times, but I didn't even support it the way I should have. And that was like my people's food. So anyway, but you have a good point.
There's an Ecuadorian restaurant over here on the east side next to Willie Taco. And I love it. And I love the woman that works there. She is so friendly, but you will see the crowd packed out at Willie Taco. And it's the same obnoxious, non-mask wearing crowd hanging out there in that space, not trying to be a part of the community. It's like the same 60 people go there all the time, with very few exceptions, as opposed to the Ecuadorian restaurant where you're going to see anyone. You see a variety of people all the time. There's never the same 3 people sitting there every day. So it's just, there's so much that could be done better. And it's frustrating for me personally, because I do love Spartanburg, but I am so burnt out on hearing the long list of all the great things that Spartanburg does that just buries people's issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, one of the things too, though, that I struggle with, and because getting to work all over the place and trying to make sense of things like economics and housing and kind of if you notice, a lot of times I've asked you all what's missing here, what do you need that you don't have, and I ask that question for a few reasons. One is it helps me to understand what's important to people. And then also, I try to figure out, are there ways that we can help solve that problem? But so often is the case that there's really only a certain number of things you can do, and they're pretty limited. And so like the idea that you guys have an Ecuadorian restaurant or a Caribbean restaurant is pretty unique, that in a city the size of yours that you have those things. And what we see a lot of times is, unless it's in a really large city, you end up having, the diversity of food offerings. We use that as our example, our canary in the coal mine. Our diversity of food offerings is more and more limited, not because a place is less and less equitable, but it is because there are fewer and fewer people who go to the restaurant, because that's, somebody may not be into Ecuadorian food or whatever the case may be. And so they have to have so many people, they have to sell so many dishes to make it be profitable and viable. And so when Natalia says, I was, sad to see it go, or surprised to see it go, I was surprised that it was there in the first place. And so what we have to do is figure out how do we have our preferences for inclusion and diversity and all of those things meet up with market forces, the forces of where people spend their money, how they're spending their money, and unless a restaurant's really big, you don't even have to have the whole city eat there. You just have to make sure that they are able to sell enough dishes of food each night, each day, or whatever. And so you nearly wonder, like, if there's a restaurant that you really love, you kind of go and ask the owner, like, how many plates you need to sell a day to not just to stay in business. We want you to thrive. We want you to just kill it, and okay, great. And so that message gets out there, and everybody knows, okay, they need to sell at least, and you'd be surprised at how small the number can be. Say, well, they need to sell 50 specials a day to stay in business. And okay, well, that's great. Let's make sure that somebody, get on a rotation even, and I mean, this seems like you think, okay, well, this is a lot of trouble to go to help a restaurant stay in business, but because of market forces and what it takes to run a restaurant and to pay the rent and to keep the lights on and to buy all that stuff, it's hard. And so if you really, really want to support them, you nearly have to come up with like a strategy. And then at a certain point, the restaurant starts to get its wheels turning and it becomes, you know, self-perpetuating. You don't have to be as intentional about supporting it. But like Natalia said, even though she liked the food and, you know, it was her food, she still didn't do, you know, the job she needed to help them stay afloat. And so I think that that's part of it too. But back to our earlier point, if you don't have a bunch of extra money to spend going out to eat, you know, and it's you know, cultural food, and so it's like, okay, this is my food, you know, for my people, then, but I don't have extra money to spend on that. So what do I do? You know, and so it's all very complicated. Brittany, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I think we've seen some of this with I want to say it's the Flavors of India. Someone tell me if that's the wrong name, but like I'm in the Spartanburg Eats group, as I'm sure some of you are. I'm not getting into all the crazy stuff that goes on there. That's not me. I'm like, where's a good place to eat today? But anyway, there had been a big, or what seemed big to me, following or whatever, of trying to find Indian places, or places with Indian food in Spartanburg. And then through that, there kind of became this restaurant. I don't even think it's technically a restaurant yet. But anyway, and they're growing and growing and stuff. So like there's a need and a desire for some of these other places. It's just like the word of mouth, you know, movement obviously is strong. And I think maybe even if we did some kind of different cultural type food trucks or something that went around some neighborhoods, places that did that, or something, something to kind of start bridging that gap and like showcasing other kinds of food other than the million burger places we have here, which a lot of them are super great. However, I value health and don't want to like clog my arteries all the time with burgers. So I'm like something different. And I think a lot of us have diverse palates and we would like to try different things. And there needs to be a way to bring that here as a test run without it being a test run. You know what I mean? Like kind of starting to showcase that and debut it, and I don't know, maybe there can be some kind of something with the city where I'm sure there's so many codes or things with this, but like if we had one or two just kind of plain food trucks that could be rentable by different restaurants or people that are trying to get restaurants started, you know, kind of rent out that food truck or whatever, and then kind of take it around to the city. Does anyone get what I'm saying? There's an idea here forming, but anyway, something. We need something.
Thank you. Hey, Becky, I think we're about to have already exceeded and gone into the next meeting, right?
No, this is the last meeting.
What day am I looking at? Am I on the wrong day?
Apparently, this is the last meeting, so we're good.
Oh. Huh. Oh yeah, that was yesterday. Sorry. Looking at my calendar here. Okay, excellent. Awesome. Anybody have any additional thoughts? Susan Baker, what do you need to tell us? What do we need to know?
I'm learning a lot listening to all this, but I've to give you some perspective from history. I moved to Spartanburg in 1967, and this town has changed so incredibly since then. There was no place to go out to eat. Nobody had ever heard of a bagel in Spartanburg. There were just so many, you know, it has come such a long way. And I just wanted to throw that perspective in that I'm sure we have a ways to go as far as, you know, expanding opportunities, but we have been making progress. If you take it along.
That's a great point. And I love that. You know, you know, you heard me say at the beginning, I love the history and try to understand how a place grows and where it came from and how it changes over time. And I think so often we we're such people of our time, of our moment, you know, and we, you know, it, especially like we'll work in a place where, you know, it's like somebody's just moved to town, and so that's like their experience. They didn't grow up there, and so like that moment in time from Evermore is that place to them, and so you sort of miss the moments where you're like, oh yeah, we got a restaurant in town, you know, or oh yeah, we got a, you know, we got another citizen, you know, another person has moved to town. But then there's also those times where it's like, oh no, the mill's closed, or, you know, there's also those kind of moments too, that people have, you know, not experienced, and that helps shape, you know, sometimes we see people who've lived through those downturns in the community have a harder time being optimistic about the future than those who've just come or who may have been young enough they didn't experience that. And so it helps to have all of those different perspectives. That's why I called on you specifically. So I appreciate that great moment of clarity. All right, anybody else have anything they want to add? Daryl, you had a lot to say in some of the other meetings. Anything else?
I was gonna say, I just, to me, the whole thing comes down to education. I mean, I know my culture, but I don't know everybody else's culture. And I think, I'm not sure how to foster those educational opportunities where we can learn other cultures. I know on our board, we've tried to diversify, and, you know, we were holding meetings on a certain night, and people are like, well, you know, in our community, Sundays are family days and we spend time with families, and, you know, we hadn't thought of that. And so I think it's all an education of learning each other's cultures, and I'm not necessarily sure how to go about fostering those opportunities.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point.
Sorry, this is where it takes going into different communities and people getting outside of their comfort zones and meeting people where they are instead of expecting people to come to them, and having community representatives and that kind of thing. And you have to build the bridge before anyone will just come to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because there's a big thing that happens here often where a lot of times Spartanburg wants to have these educational forums, or they want to read a book about diversity, about inclusion, about racism, but it stops at the book. There's no further work done after they read the book. After they read White Fragility, it's like, oh, well, that was a nice thought. They might share an article or two on social media, but they don't go. You have relationships and friendships and now, so treat new people that you don't know, go make those interactions happen. Go make friends with these people the same way you would go approach having a friendship with anyone else, and learn. You have to do life with people. You cannot get this from a book. It's not going to happen, because the same, from what I'm seeing and showing up in community meetings, it's the same people showing up at the community meetings. And you're not getting everyone's perspective by just going to the meeting that's on the plan, just showing up for the things that are on the agenda. You're going to have to make the effort to go and be in these other spaces. And this is what I mean by one of the importances of going to support these other restaurants and these other cultural institutions in the area. You have to go and make that leap.
Well, and to Daryl's point, this example I was going to give was of myself, actually. I remember when I lived just outside of Washington, D.C., I was not a sushi guy. It was not that I didn't like the people who own the sushi restaurant or the people who went to eat sushi, or even that I didn't like sushi, because I'd never had it. I just didn't know sushi. And what happened was a new sushi restaurant was going into the neighborhood, and we were in charge of approving sign. Can you hear me okay, Becky? Am I breaking up?
I'm hearing a lot of feedback from somebody. I'm going to mute everybody else because I'm hearing some feedback.
Okay. And so what happened was we approved their sign, and they were really thankful that they had gotten through the process. And so they brought in a platter of sushi. It was like 10 of everything. And so I could walk up to the table and look at it all. And I still didn't know what it was, but I didn't have to decide to order it, and I didn't have to buy it. And so I just picked up a piece, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. And I ate it, and I was like, okay, I like sushi. I'm a sushi guy. But I would have not gone to the restaurant to try that because I didn't know what to order. I didn't know what the words said on the menu. At that time, we couldn't really Google everything as we, you know. And so I think there, you know, oftentimes is, you know, a concern that there's a lack of support of something for reasons beyond just somebody doesn't know it or they're you know, uncertain. And the second story about myself, you may not know this based on what I do for a living, which is go around and talk to hundreds and thousands of people. But I actually have a lot of anxiety in talking to people in social settings. I don't, you know, I wouldn't just go up and approach somebody I didn't know. I hardly like talking to the people I do know. And so it's just a Brian thing. It's just a me thing. And I think that it's a challenge. You know, Becky always reminds me, Becky's an introvert. And she always says, it's okay for me to be an introvert. You know, you can't expect, because when I'm with a group like you now, I can be an extrovert. I don't know. It's like I don't know if I get to pretend to be one or feel what it's like. But Becky, you know, she says, you know, I can't be that or be you, and that's okay. And thank goodness she's not like me, because if it weren't for all the things about her that are different than or like me, we wouldn't be able to do the things we do, because she helps me keep everything together. So anyway, I guess I just encourage that when you see people not supporting a restaurant or not going out of their comfort zone or whatever, that sometimes it's just who they are, and it's not that they're avoiding the other people. It's just that they're protecting themselves from the things that that cause them anxiety. So, but I love sushi now, and I'm glad that I get to have an outlet to talk to people and be an extrovert sometimes. So anyway, just wanted to share those personal stories with you. All right, so this is incredible. I love this. This is so helpful. Hopefully we can keep these discussions going and keep the numbers growing. We need to get more and more people to participate. I think that, you know, we end up, you know, having similar themes to our conversation, and that's okay. That's sort of applying those themes to the different types of settings and all that are helpful. One thing that I would love, and we didn't get into it too much, is, you know, once you leave the discussion here today, to think about what are some of those things that people, or there's moments or there's places or the physical attributes, because it's really a lot easier for the comprehensive plan or zoning ordinance update to inform the physical form of the city. And so are there things about the city, take the people out of the equation. People, you know, like I was saying, if, you know, if there's a group of people over here, I might not be comfortable in this space, but if I were in this space by myself, I would be very comfortable, or with one other person. And so think about the physical form of the city, and maybe in some of our upcoming discussions, we can talk about how to make places and spaces, and I mean spaces literally, that people feel comfortable in, or that represent, you know, diversity, or that are equitable. So thank you all so much for your input and sharing your stories and your insights with us. And I hope that you're enjoying yourself and finding these discussions to be meaningful and open and transparent. And hopefully you feel like we are listening, and we will continue on. And there's a drawing that I always forget. Where, Martin, are you there? You going to give us the winners?
Yes, let me get this set up, and then I'll do that. Are you ready?
We're ready.
Daryl Harmon, first winner.
Hey, there we go.
$25 quick trip card, QT.
QT.
Moses Jenkins, second winner.
Moses.
QT $25 gift card.
Awesome. All right. Well, we draw every time, every meeting, so come back for your next chance to win. What is next, Becky? When's our next discussion or event?
Tomorrow, we're going to have a live show and tell at 5 p.m. And that's basically just going to be our team kind of showing you all what we're working on, explaining a little bit about what we've learned and how we're turning that into the next steps and the document itself.
Yeah, because what we have, I didn't actually do a very good job of describing what else is happening besides these Zoom calls. There's the team of people that I keep talking about are actually working on. I have people working on drawing plans. Our artists will actually be starting tonight or tomorrow working on drawing, beautiful drawings of some of these plans. We've got our economists, the trip is, crunching numbers and things, and people are making maps and looking at trying to craft some language about we're looking at all the different inputs we've been getting from people about what does equity mean, and so maybe trying to come up with some language about that. So anyway, lots of stuff is being done while we're having these moments, and we're taking notes and listening. There's working happening too. So stay tuned for all that. Come back tomorrow.
I also want to mention too, we do know in most of these meetings, there's been a very active chat going on. I know we're not always acknowledging some of the things that are popping up in the chat, but we are saving it. We are going back and taking a look at it. So we do have all of that information as well. Thank you to people who post links and ideas and stuff over there. We've got that too.